Avast ye mateys,
Arr!
and welcome to This Week in History with Mike and Will. I be Mike,
I be Will.
and it's This Week in History.
Pirates.
That's right. And what happens, this won't happen all the show, I can't do it. What happens is Will picks an event or person from history that happened this week.
Aye.
He does some research on it, and
Aye.
then he's got 1 hour
Aye.
to explain that to me.
1 R.
Now, as you may suspect, or figured out from context clues, today's history will involve pirates.
Arr.
Or a pirate.
R. One pirate.
one
Well,
pirate.
many
All right,
pirates.
good. Well,
I don't think they all talk like this. This is
I
wrong.
believe they don't talk like that at all. That's based
No.
off of one movie actor from the 40s.
Then that I'll be the lucky ones.
There we
Treasure
go.
Island, which actually is directly related to our story today.
Good.
Arr.
Because if he talks like this the whole time, I
No.
don't blame you for tuning away.
Tune it out. No.
But we won't talk like that. We're going to
Nope.
talk about pirates.
We're going to talk about pirates.
Captain Kidd.
Captain Kidd specifically.
Not
Yes.
just for breakfast.
Yeah.
You got 1 hour, Will. Ready?
I'm ready, sir.
I mean,
All right. So, Captain William Kidd was not born a captain. He
Okay.
was just born William Kidd
was
in
born
Dundee,
Kidd.
Scotland. So,
Ooh.
actually, he would not have talked R like this because that's more of an Irish accent.
okay.
He was Scottish,
Let's
and
go.
he was
Good
not renowned for talking.
Talking.
Arr, like that.
Okay.
That's all nonsense. And like Mike said, that is pretty much from, what was that, a Disney movie, I think?
Something,
Back in
yeah,
the day,
yeah.
19,
Treasure Island.
1960 Treasure Island. One of the first colorized versions of it.
Yeah.
And
However that actor chose to do it is the way that we
that's
all
how
decide.
everybody thinks pirates
all
talk.
pirates talk.
Pirates talked, however, their nationality talked or their regional dialect
Yeah.
was. There wasn't like a common pirate parlance. And they went, oh, there's Captain Jack Sparrow, Keith Richards.
Yeah.
That was their own thing. But he was from Dundee, Scotland. There are a few different sources that say he comes from different places. But he was for sure baptized in Dundee, Scotland.
A baptized pirate.
Well, most pirates were. They don't all come out as pirates. Some of them do, I guess. I don't know.
The baptized part was the.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so his early details are vague. There's not a lot of information about him because he wasn't important. And like many people of the time, if you weren't super important or had major life deeds, they didn't write anything down about
Yeah.
it.
Not like today where everyone's lives
Social media.
are fully documented.
Yep, everything's documented. We have photos, we have videos, and we have all this information.
We live in a surveillance state, people.
It's amazing.
Embrace it.
Usually because we do it to ourselves. The government doesn't have to do it. We do it. Ha
Yay.
ha! Good job, America. And rest of the world.
We'll
Everybody
discuss
else.
the surveillance state later.
Someday, when it's historically relevant. It's, it's currently not, of course. Because I don't want to go to prison. I'm not questioning anything. We do know that his father passed away early in his life, and then he was kind of raised like by not an assembly or a committee, but like a bunch of people contributed to make sure that the kid had a proper
All right.
upbringing.
This is the mid 1600s.
This is the mid 1600s.
What's going on in Scotland at the time?
Scotland. So this is the end of. This is after Queen Elizabeth's time. Life is not amazing, really, in Scotland for a while. There's a lot of risings against the English.
Yeah.
They're constantly in a state of feuds. There's little rebellions all the time, but they are starting to become fully part of the British Empire now.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, it's finalized later on in the 1700s, so there's still like uprisings and whatnot. But like southern Scotland tends to, and especially the wealthy citizens tend to lean towards, yeah, we're British now. We have a stake in things.
Oh, okay.
Same is true going on in Ireland. Later on in the century, we have what's called the Willamite Wars, which I mentioned in last week's. In Ireland was an uprising. I was wrong about why it was called the Willamite Wars.
Oh.
It was called that because William of Orange was involved, and there were the Willamite factions who supported William of Orange overthrowing James the
Peach?
7th and 2nd.
Oh.
I hate
James
those
the
guys.
Peach would have been great.
James, well, we'll call him James the Peach. So William the Orange goes against James the Peach.
There you go.
And he won, and it was part of this glorious revolution, which will be featured later on in our story. But
Ooh.
I just wanted to correct, that was a well actually that I forgot to
Cool.
bring up at the beginning. So, eventually, probably seeking a better life for himself and a better future, young William goes to New York, which recently has been taken from the Dutch by the English, and now it's a British colony. So, happy days for all those involved. It's this promise of prosperity and
Yes.
wealth and growth, which he really just doesn't have that opportunity in Scotland right now.
Happy
especially in
days for everyone.
Yes.
Except, people living there before.
Yes,
That's fine.
and pretty much everybody actually. It's all the myth. But he manages. So he goes there and he actually manages to make a bit of a name for himself. He gets along with really prominent citizens. So he's an affable guy. Some of his friends included 3 governors
Ooh.
of New York.
It's good to have
Says-
a friend as a
Yeah,
governor.
he doesn't just make friends; he makes friends in high places.
Nice.
He served on ships, possibly even a pirate vessel, which may have been where he learned how to sail. There weren't a ton of opportunities, but New York, especially like the Long Island Sound and that area, it's got a lot of little islands. It's great for piracy.
So it just occurred to me now, a pirate vessel. You say a pirate vessel casually.
Yep.
And I was picturing like in the movies and stuff like that. They just pull out the ship, they park there, whatever. Pirating is illegal.
Super illegal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you pull into port, you gotta be like,
Not a pirate.
not a pirate today.
So-
la, la. Just happen to have this large vessel.
There's a distinction between piracy, privateering, and then piracy that is acceptable.
Okay.
So let's say you're British, but your piracy targets are exclusively French,
Oh, that's interesting.
or at least not British.
Right.
You might be able to get, like, they might allow it, especially if you kick up bribes to the governor
Oh.
and the ruling class, because the crown is not as solidly concerned about what's going on in the colonies.
Right.
So it's a little more disorderly. It's a little haphazard, a little chaotic. And money makes the world go around.
All
so,
those things make sense. All right.
yes. So now everything's clarified.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it just suddenly occurred to me. They're like, well, where can we fix our ship? Well, we can't go there because we'll be arrested.
most pirates had a safe port.
Yeah.
Like they had friends there, either the local constabulary or
Yeah.
warehouse workers, things like that. And they paid off people so that they could go into that port and it was safe. Now, sometimes those people would get swapped out
Sure.
for somebody unfriendly. So you think you're going to a friendly port,
Yeah.
and then they grab you and execute you
Yeah, that's
like
the life
immediately.
life of a pirate.
It's not a good idea to be a pirate. It's a really, really bad idea.
It sounds
Super
fun
dangerous.
and dangerous.
Super dangerous.
It sounds actually we were just talking about this a moment ago from one of our quotes from earlier. Brave versus stupid.
Yep.
Just a matter of you don't die while doing it.
Yep.
Pirating sounds brave and fun.
Yes.
As long as you don't get caught.
As
and
long as you
die.
don't get caught. There's like one successful pirate,
There we go.
and that was Henry Morgan, and it's because he retired.
Oh, well, let's talk about this pirate then.
Well, this is not
Captain
going to be.
Kidd.
He's not as successful as Henry Morgan.
Oh,
Spoiler.
no.
Not as successful.
All right. I didn't even mean to stumble into spoilers.
Sorry, but so at some point though, we lose a huge chunk of his life. We only really start to get what's going on in 1689. So that's 44 years into his life,
okay.
which he may as well be dead at this point. That's very old for 1600s.
Mm-hmm.
Like most people don't. I think that's the average life expectancy. It's not very good.
Yeah.
So somehow, we can assume healthy, fit sailor type.
Sure.
A lot of sailors, if they made it through the storms and everything else.
Oh, yeah. If you
and
live,
it's
you're
easy.
strong.
If you live,
Okay.
you're strong.
Okay, okay.
And if you don't, well, you had some really, really bad luck.
It's a circle
so,
of life.
So far in his life, he's actually doing well. He's punching up. He's climbing the social ladder. He's being successful. He serves under a French pirate named Jean Fontaine.
Jean Fontaine.
Fantin. Fontaine. And apparently he did not enjoy Jean Fontaine as a captain.
No.
He was a bit of a tyrant, apparently, and he did not engender goodwill from the English sailors under his command. He cared about the French ones, but he cared a lot less about any English who worked for him.
Okay.
Now, in 1688 is the start of this War of the Grand Alliance. It's also called the 9 Years' War, or the Williamite Wars that we mentioned earlier. England and France go to war during this time.
Again.
Again. So I was like, which war was this
Yeah, I
that
don't
they're
know.
because it's on this at this time while they're sailing around and they're raiding and doing piracy, and suddenly this war breaks out and you've got French and English on the same ship. That raises tension.
Oh, sure.
Because some of them are like hyper nationalists who love their country, and then others are, well, we're all just pirates. We're all just sailing. Now,
Let's settle this on the beach,
Yes.
fellas. Let's not tear up the ship.
right. So I'm going to explain quickly that at this time, a lot of people think that piracy is, my ship sails up to your ship, we shoot some cannons, we all fight,
Yeah.
we kill each other, we swing on board, I kill you, and I take all your gold.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
That is not...
just you try.
Yes, that is not typically how piracy works. If you're a merchantman, you don't typically have a bajillion guns on your ship because the weight of carrying cannon and the amount of crew necessary to fire said cannon and to carry all the spare powder and shot
Sure, yeah.
and everything else takes up cargo space.
Yep. You want to smuggle
You
stuff.
want to carry a lot of stuff. You
Yeah.
have to make this trip on a boat that could take months or even years, depending on where you're sailing.
Yeah.
You need to carry a huge amount of cargo. So a lot of these merchant ships had like crews of 20 or less, which shows how good these guys were, because we're talking about ships that displace like 400 tons. These are big ships.
Big ship.
And the formula for tonnage, for like the weight of a ship,
Yeah.
is very complicated because it's like the length times the width minus a certain amount plus a certain amount based on the width
Yep.
times another amount, and that's the result they come up with. It works because all the ships up until they start having steamships are kind of the same proportions.
Okay.
You want the front to have kind of the same curvature, the back to have kind of the same curvature. You don't want it to be much wider than that. So
Well,
they all
that's why you take away the things.
Yeah.
Because it's the width,
yes,
but it's
it's minus a certain
Yeah,
amount.
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, but because all ships are based around this kind of
yeah.
constant, oh yeah, this works the best for this size of a ship, and it will displace this much water. So as long as we build it around these parameters, we're good.
Okay.
So they have a tonnage set. So some of these ships are 400 tons. Some of them are even larger than that. Typically, you don't use something like a galleon anymore. That was the Spanish ship. Those things were massive. They were like 4 stories above the waterline.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're huge, slow, 100-gun ships. But they would get crushed by smaller, faster-moving ships because they just couldn't shoot back fast enough. And they'd have 500 guys on the ship, but they don't do any good if you've got a ship with longer ranges.
They could wave from the
Yeah,
windows.
exactly. Like, we'd love to fight, but we're sinking.
Come closer.
Come closer so we can shoot you with our muskets. No. Pew, pew, pew. Bigger, longer cannons.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're having these advances in all of the craftsmanship based around naval warfare. Cannons are much more sophisticated. They're a little easier to make because they start having cannon foundries. They are making them out of materials that work well at sea.
That's another thought as well. Who thought, like, hey, this giant heavy gun, let's put it on the boat, see what happens.
Yes. Also, we made it out of iron, and this is all salt water.
Yeah.
Why is it rust? We should make it out of bronze. That's
yeah.
a better idea. Bronze cannon, very good.
Yeah.
So we have all these advances happening, and pirates don't care about carrying loot to begin with. They're not concerned about major cargo shipping, so they can have a lot more guys on the ship and a lot more guns.
Oh.
So you've got a merchantman carrying a huge amount of cargo and a much faster ship made specifically for this kind of fighting. They sail up. Usually it's a chase that can happen for a week. Sometimes a ship will take a week to hunt down. Like, you'll be following it and you just can't catch the wind properly. You catch up, you raise your colors, they raise their colors, which is the flag.
Yep.
If it's kind of like a pirate flag, because we're getting into the era of the pirate flag, the Jolly Roger, the black flag.
The pirates fully would like just say we are.
If
Hi.
they want your ship, they will raise the black flag and
Hi,
hope.
we're pirates.
There are some that, so each ship had like its own flag,
Yeah.
right? Some later pirates, and we'll talk about them hopefully in future, I plan on talking about, like Blackbeard. Blackbeard had a very unique flag where it's a skeletal devil with a spear stabbing a heart. And that was his flag. And if you saw that, you're like, oh God, it's Blackbeard. That guy's
You think we got a picture of that?
I got a picture of it right there.
Scary.
So as an example.
Yeah.
But like guys like at this time, they also just would fly national colors. So if you're, say, at war, England and France, and it's a French vessel flying its French flag, and you raise an English flag, they'll be like, oh, crap. The English are upon us. They will kill us.
Hey, say
They have
hello.
guns, and we have cloth.
Cloth.
We surrender. We... Also,
Bad spot of
Yeah.
ocean.
wrong place, old chum. Seem to be in a bit of a pickle. Now, other things to consider too is pirates usually didn't get like massive hauls of gold and silver. That was like stuff that you dealt with the treasure fleets when the Spaniards were bringing over gold and silver plate from the colonies. We despoiled and raped and defiled these Aztec and Mayan lands. And
Also
here's all
known
our
as
stuff.
the colonies.
Also known as the colonies, yes. I love when they that's such a whitewash. Yes, the colonies. Like, you mean the place where you guys enslaved and murdered millions of people?
Yeah, well, that didn't all fit on the header.
It makes us look rather bad. I don't know how I made it English because the Spaniards are the ones we're talking about. Anyway,
All right.
but everything being shipped is valuable. The thing is, we're talking about like bulk goods that are required to run now civilizations and trade.
Spices and stuff.
Spices are that would be a major haul. Like a box of spices this big is worth a ton of money.
Sure.
But we're talking like bales of wool and foodstuffs,
Okay.
which are also valuable, but you need so much more of them
Yeah.
to make as much of a profit. It's still very profitable, but it's kind of like modern shipping is all bulk goods that can last for forever that you can say, oh yeah, it'll take a little while to get there,
Yeah.
but when it gets there, we'll make money. So we're talking iron ore, we're talking lumber, we're all these hard goods that will last a long time. Also booze, very popular, which is why rum was popular on ships. It didn't go bad. It was something you could drink, and it tended to calm people down.
Now, there's a thing about wine and or spirits, alcohol spirits. That I read a book about the history of beverages and stuff, and one of those because then they could distill it down, less water, and so then like wine they would like, so it was less to transport.
Yeah.
And then when they would get somewhere, then they would add water.
That
to
makes
it.
sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the Greeks used to do that too, is if they had wine,
Yeah.
they'd pour it out. They always add water. If you read the Iliad and the Odyssey, they always
Yeah.
add water because it's thick. It's almost syrupy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense that they would do that. It'd be easier to ship.
There you go.
Beer was not as commonly shipped.
Yeah.
And then actually the concept of the IPA, the India Pale Ale, is because shipping normal beer, it was spoiled.
Oh yeah.
So they had to add a bunch of stuff to it to make it last, which gives it that weird IPA.
Yeah, hear that,
flavor.
hipsters? What you're drinking is just preservatives.
That's, it is. It's a natural preservative, but
Yeah.
it's just a preservative.
I like a good IPA myself.
And,
but I
and
like
it
a good
actually
preservative.
wouldn't have quite tasted that way.
Oh,
See,
sure.
they make it nowadays and they just give it to you. It's supposed to sit there for like months and go through a ship and then last. So it is like, well, we want beer while we're in India.
All right, I've gotten us off track.
No. So, but it is important to understand like what piracy was all about.
Yeah.
You really are trying to disrupt trade a lot of the time. So we're hiring British guys to fight French guys. We've hired the Dutch to fight everybody. The Dutch had they were really good sailors, and they
Dutch
made a
will
lot
do
of
it.
ships. And
Yeah.
they typically were fighting against everybody bigger than them. Spain was a big problem, but yeah, so the Dutch got really good at sailing and building ships. So while we're having all these battles going on between these different countries, we have the pirates that kind of bounce around. They don't necessarily have loyalty. That's the difference between a pirate and a privateer. A privateer is specifically commissioned by a country to fight against that country's enemies. As long as it's against not your guys, you're fine.
Go ahead.
It's
have
not
fun.
piracy.
Right.
But it's supposed to specifically be like against the nation you're at war with. And you get to keep whatever you capture or steal minus like a percentage. Usually like 10% goes to the crown. So that's kind of the world we're in.
Yeah.
And when you attack a ship, unless it's a warship, which is never something pirates attack.
Why would they? That
Because
seems like a bad
warships
idea.
are much big. Like
Yeah.
pirate ships have like 30 guns, which is a lot of cannons. Usually 15 on a side, and then 1 or 2 in the front, and 1 or 2 in the back. So you have chaser cannons and bow cannons and all
Yeah.
these other things. And then you'd have little swivel guns, they were called, which is, it's not little, but they're that big around instead of that big around, and they're on the railings, and you shoot down like a big shotgun, basically.
Okay.
Warships would have 60 guns or 100 guns. We're starting to get into the man of war era, where the British make these. It's the equivalent of like a galleon, but they're much faster, and they have way more firepower packed into them. Galleons originally were all about carrying a lot of guys.
Yep.
The man of war might have 300 crew, but most of them are shooting cannons at you. So it's suicide to attack one unless you are also a warship,
Right.
which is not a good thing for a pirate because they're not as fast. They can't strike and then get away.
Yeah.
They can't go in the shallows.
There's probably also no value for them to
Not really.
to attack a warship. Yeah.
No, there's nothing. They're not carrying anything except death.
Yeah.
So pirates avoid warships, so their ships are faster. They have to be faster, but they have to have enough guns to take down a merchant vessel and have enough crew to overtake anybody they fight, but also have some cargo space because you want to be able to take the goods. There's no point in just sinking a ship.
Yes.
Another common practice was the pirates would capture a ship, and then they'd say, hey, you guys can live, but you sail this ship for us, and we go to a port, and we're going to sell the ship, and then you guys can do whatever you want.
Okay.
So a lot of pirates managed to avoid unnecessary bloodshed if they could. Now, other pirates,
I'd like to think they would give really good speeches.
yes, other pirates enjoyed torture. They liked it.
Oh.
They were crabby from being at sea. They were pissed off that they had to work and hunt down these guys.
They are by nature people who don't really follow the
They
rules.
don't follow the rules. Some, they're bullies. A lot of them are just horrible bullies.
Sure.
Some pirates did not engage in any forms of torture. There were some that did not do bad stuff.
Yeah.
They all were at least thieves and
At
violent.
least, yeah.
But not all of them engaged in horrifying torture. But some would like the keel hauling concept, which is
yeah.
you tie somebody up, and then you have a rope go underneath the ship to the keel. This is the big wooden beam that runs down the middle of the ship.
Yeah.
And then the rope's tied on the other side, and you just kind of rub them, under the ship and back out the other side. And their back has been run across the bottom of the ship, which is usually covered in awesome barnacles and shelled creatures. So if you've
Plus,
ever
you're underwater.
being in the Green Bay area, in the Wisconsin area, if you've ever stepped on a zebra mussel in the water, that sucks. Now make it bigger and scraping across your back. And they would do that to people a few times, and then they die.
Yeah.
That was a horrifying thing. That happened. That was rare. It's too much work.
I had heard that they would do that, and you'd just send you through once, and if you lived, you could continue on.
It was usually, if you lived, that was amazing, and yeah, they probably would.
Okay.
But most of the time, they did not.
Keep him. I like him. He's strong.
Keel hauling was not like you were not expected to survive.
Yes.
That is a horrifying experience. You could just drown on the way.
Sure.
Or you're ripped apart and beat up and bones are broken. It's not nice. Others were just like tied up and beaten. There are reports of
Or
guys,
just even throwing someone overboard is
throwing them overboard to just falling overboard. The walking the plank thing, they wouldn't have done that. That wasn't a thing. That's a trope from movies and stuff.
Okay.
But they did make people like jump overboard. They just wouldn't have rigged a gangplank to stick out into nothingness.
to make it more dramatic.
They wouldn't have done that. They would have just thrown you overboard if they didn't want you. There is a very famous French pirate named L'Ollonais who, this is particularly grim, stabbed a guy in the stomach and ripped out a length of his intestine, nailed it to the mast, and then chased him at cutlass point around it so he slowly unwound himself from the inside.
Ew.
That was a recorded instance of particularly brutal. I would have just been like, just kill me,
I
dude.
can't run anymore.
I
Yeah.
can't. I would have stopped at, you stabbed me.
Yeah.
So, but that was just an example of the more extreme torture. Guys
Yeah,
were roasted over fires, and a lot of the time this was to suss out if there was hidden treasure, and other times it was just because these guys got off on killing people and causing pain. They just enjoyed causing pain on others. You've met people like this, the type of people who kick a dog and enjoy that they kick the dog. They're just mean and cruel.
Would
this attracts a certain type of people into this.
Is reputation building a reason as well?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
Because if you find out that the guy who disemboweled a dude and made him run around a mast is on your tail, you will surrender to that. And he did that because they fought.
Yeah.
You're much more likely to surrender. Now, you might take a beating, and you're going to lose your ship.
Yep.
But that's way better than disembowel.
Losing your intestines.
Yes. And watching it go away. So, yeah, building a reputation of fear. It's a double-edged sword, though, right? Because you built this reputation of fear. Nobody wants to mess with you. But it makes people hate you. And it brings out the pirate hunters.
Oh, pirate hunters.
Pirate hunters are a thing.
Tell me more.
We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
So, this is the world we're living in, right?
Yeah.
We're just shy of what's called the golden age of piracy. We're actually at the beginning of it. That's
The
usually
dawn.
like the early 1700s is considered the golden age of piracy. That's when you get the legends. That's when you get Captain Henry Avery, who's around right now.
Yep.
Captain Kidd
Kidd.
is like these are the originators of the golden age of piracy. Blackbeard, Black Bart, who is the most successful pirate of all time as far as ships. He captured or scuttled more than 400 in his 3-year career.
Oh, that's
That's a lot.
it's like one every other day.
That's like he just knew where to be. Apparently, Blackbeard was less successful but much more fearsome. So we'll talk about him.
Sure.
He's great. I like talking about those two. They're very different in their
I might go
approach.
with Redbeard. He's red
Redbeard.
enough. Red enough.
There was a pirate named Redbeard, Barbarossa. The Barbary Corsairs had a pirate named Barbarossa who was the Redbeard, and they were terrifying.
Or Graybeard. I guess it's gray
You
now.
could be the gray.
Graybeard.
You could be the Gredbeard. It's
Gredbeard.
gray, red, Redbeard.
Perfect.
Or just diet, or
Sure.
and say it's the blood of your enemies.
Ooh.
Like this is normally gray, but I've
Right.
killed so many men, it's reddish.
I should
now.
tell you, I'm not a very good sailor, though.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a very big problem for pirates. Pirates were almost always exceptional sailors.
Yeah.
A lot of them came from a naval background, and a huge number of pirates stopped being naval people in like the Royal Navy because it was more brutal than being a pirate.
Oh.
Like serving in the military was worse than being a pirate. Like they
Yeah,
were
you do.
meaner.
Oh, yeah.
Corporal punishment was common. They would
Really?
beat the sailors. Most sailors were press ganged, where it was you just walking around and then they're like, "You're now in the Navy," but I don't want to be. You're in the Navy. Oh no! They would just grab people off of ships and say, "Well, now you're in the Navy, old boy, and if you don't like it, bosun, beat the man."
So pirating, while rough, though, you are the
There's
little
freedom.
More, yeah, freedom.
There's freedom, and pirate ships are democracies largely.
Okay.
If you do a bad job, you get rid of it. So, folding all of that information now into what's going on. Jean Fantin was this pirate. He was a French pirate.
Hello.
His most famous thing is that Captain Kidd was one of his crewmen. William Kidd was one of the crew.
Okay.
Now, while they're sailing around, the pirates also engaged in land warfare. They, being ships full of angry, violent, armed men, would land. Well, they wouldn't like park the ship. You'd stop outside and then you'd row ashore on smaller boats, and they would go overland and attack people. So they were like the buccaneers. Those guys were called that because, like, that style of warfare was they would sail around, they would disembark like an amphibious assault, and they'd take towns,
Ooh.
and they'd just pillage them, burn them, take the stuff they wanted, and then they'd go. This was less profitable because you didn't know where any of the goods were, and half of the towns had forts, and attacking a fort
Sure.
is suicide unless you have a huge army.
Unless you have a fort.
Unless you have a fort, or sometimes they'd take guns off the ships. So in the midst,
Who's rowing that one ashore?
yeah, in the midst of this, war breaks out between England and France.
Again.
This is their war.
Still.
This is that Willemite war that we were talking
Yep.
about. And Fantin is leading an attack on land. Meanwhile, Kidd and some of his compatriots are like, I don't like the French, and we're at war with them. I'm
Shame.
taking this boat.
Oh. Shame we're on the same ship.
So while the captain is ashore fighting with the majority of his guys, these dudes on the ship are almost all English.
Oh.
And
Fontaine didn't do that math
he
before
didn't
he left.
do that math. He did not think. He's like,
I want to take you and you, et toi.
who is French?
You come with me.
You all come with me. We'll speak the same
Oh.
language. Who's English? You stay a goddamn boat.
In retrospect, he's got to be kicking himself
Terrible
for that.
idea.
Where did
Now,
my ship go?
There was a fellow on the ship named Robert Culliford, who was Culliford, Robert Culliford, who was a fellow pirate and a fellow English citizen, because, again, Kidd is Scottish.
Okay.
So the Scots and the English are like, let's get rid of this guy. They kill the French that are on the ship.
Oh, should have gone on the.
Should have gone to land with your boss and steal the boat. And then they rename it the Blessed William. Because William Kidd.
Okay.
They name it after him. And they sail it to Nevis, which is the future home of Alexander Hamilton. That's where he
Oh.
was born.
All right.
Hooray!
Yay.
Now, after capturing this ship,
The blessed William.
there's either a vote. There's always a vote for captain.
Okay.
Or he was appointed by the local governor. But Kidd is made captain of the ship because he's
Was he the one that mutinied?
He led the mutiny.
It was a mutiny, folks. That was a mutiny.
That was a mutiny.
A well done one, which is why we don't talk about it much.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah, and he did it right. And
He
left.
did it right. Just left. But it was him and Culliford
Yep.
kind of teamed up and like, yeah, this is stupid. And he was either chosen by the crew or he was appointed by the governor. What's probably likely is the crew picked him because if they didn't want him as captain, he wouldn't have lasted long.
True.
And then Christopher Codrington, who was the local British governor of Nevis, was like, I need boats now that we're at war. Would you fellas who killed some French folk and stole a French ship, would you care to kill some more French? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And I can't pay you, but I will let you keep whatever you steal.
Nice.
So he's encouraging piracy and raids.
Yes.
So there's not a ton of shipping around there that's coming from the French. It's these are the Leeward Isles, so this is largely like British territory. There's a lot of different cultures in the area, but there isn't a huge amount of shipping going on, especially since everybody knows there's a war on. So
Okay,
they're like,
yeah.
I don't want to go there. He eventually leads a raid on a town, and they destroy this whole town.
Who does? The
Kidd.
Okay.
And they steal 2,000 pounds of like silver, the pounds sterling. So
Okay, sure.
The
Actual silver.
the money, actual money. So not a huge raid, but back then that's still a ton of money.
And a lot to row back to your ship.
That's like $250,000
Wow.
by today's
All right.
standards, but split between probably the whole crew.
Sure.
So it's not a huge haul, but it's a decent haul.
Yeah,
The
nice.
problem is this is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Raiding these small things. He takes another ship. He's awarded 150 pounds for his work, and then he decides he's going to go to Antigua to probably rearm, resupply, maybe get some new guys, and chase down leads. That's a very common thing. Pirates go to towns and like check out the merchants, see what's coming and going, check ship ledgers.
Just checking things out.
Check.
Are you a pirate, sir? Nah, I'm just
Here's
taking
some money.
Just taking some notes.
Yep. Just doop, doop, doop.
Just taking notes on your
a
security
lovely ship.
here.
It's a shame something bad happened to him. Was sailing out after a day or so. Doop, 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 doop. Now, these land raids are difficult. They're not as profitable. And his guys, some of them are not so happy. So while he's on shore in Antigua, in comes Robert Culliford, his
Culliford.
fellow mutineer, and he sails off in Kidd's ship. He just takes it.
Here's a problem.
And Kidd's like, yep.
Yep.
I'll turn about's fair play.
Yep.
I guess once a mutineer, always a mutineer, you thieving bastard.
There's a problem if you hook up with somebody who's willing to mutiny.
Yep.
They might
It's like being in a relationship
Yeah.
with a cheater. It's like
Yeah.
once they cheat, if you take them back, you're giving them permission to do it again.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't
Yeah.
do that, kids.
Don't.
Don't have a mutineer on your ship because he's done it once.
Yep.
He's gonna do it again. Be like, so it was great us, stealing that ship, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to ask you to leave the ship now.
Hey, but
Go
I
over that way.
thought we were.
No, because you stole the ship
Right.
from the other guy.
Yeah.
What's stopping you from doing it to me?
Oh, what's stopping it for me for doing it? Ye?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm
Oh
saying.
no!
And I'm the captain, so I'm the one who stands to lose. Go bye-bye.
Right.
We'll drop you off at the next port. Nice knowing you. Here's some money. Pass off.
Was it a pleasant mutiny?
Well, I mean, I think he just convinced the guys on the boat, and he had enough guys because a lot of these ships only need like 8 people to sail.
Yep.
And he was just, well, Count's gone, and this privateering sucks. Let's
Sure.
just be pirates.
Okay, and they left.
And they left to just go be
I
pirates.
would like to think then at another port, someone else mutinied, and it just kept getting smaller and
It's just
smaller.
a smaller
So it's
crew.
just like one guy.
These guys wind up electing a fella named William Mays to be the captain. So Culliford doesn't even take leadership, which is a problem. Like, I would not let that guy be on my crew because he was an aide on another ship, and
Yep.
he mutinied and then made another guy captain. Now he's the aide on this ship, and then he mutinies against Kid. Now he's the aide on this ship, and he's going to mutiny maybe against you. You can't trust this guy.
yeah.
So they sail off and become pirates. Kid's like, well, I guess I'm done with the boat for now. I'm going back to New York. So he takes his
So he
loot.
walks back to New York.
Well, he takes a ship.
Okay.
He apparently has enough money to either buy a ship or eventually acquires one. It's called the Antigua, which is where he came from.
Yeah.
And he goes back to New York. He has enough money to invest in Trinity Church, which is still a building. This is Trinity Church. It's a very nice, high-spired church.
Ooh.
Quite
Why would he
lovely.
invest in a church?
Because that was what Men of Standing did.
Oh, okay.
So he is not just some random dude. He wants
really
to
was-
establish that he's like, he can
I'm legit.
hoity and toity with the best of them.
I was really trying to figure out the pirate angle on that. He invested in the church so he could steal from the parishioners.
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess he could.
Little pirate tip for you all.
So now that we're real criminals, let's invest in being clergy.
There you go.
That's where the money's really at.
Well, it's not wrong.
It's not wrong. No, that's when you start a religion.
Well, actually, it's a fine idea for a movie.
There you go.
I'm going to make a little note here. Pirates start a church.
Pirate church. So he's back in New York trying to do what he can to make a buck and so he invests in like businesses. He's still involved in shipping, but now less piracy. And he meets a woman named Sarah Bradley Cox Oort.
Sounds like you stumbled with a game of Boggle there.
Yep. Now apparently she is a knockout. She is a very attractive woman. She's in her 20s.
And the only female in our story.
Apparently, yep. Actually, yes. She will
So
be.
she
But
is
no.
by default
Now,
the
at
most
this point,
attractive
he's
woman.
46.
Okay.
She's still in her 20s. She's been widowed twice already.
Well, it is a rough time.
Her first husband was rich, so she inherited all of that
Oh,
money,
Nice. That makes her far more
making her
attractive
an
already.
eligible bachelorette and widow, but maybe a little cursed, right? Because she's
Maybe.
had two husbands and they both died. Apparently not through nefarious means. She's a very well-respected member of society, and Kid and she meet. They fall madly in love, and they get hitched.
Nice.
Now Kid's married to a wealthy woman, so that yay for him. But it seems like they had just like a good relationship. It doesn't seem like he tried to take from her, and he
Okay.
was content to be just now a man of society and of some importance. So that all happened.
Don't worry, baby. My pirating days are all behind me.
And that was 16 May 1691. They get married, and it's a lovely ceremony. It would be cool if it was at Trinity Church, which he paid for. So we're gonna, just for fun's sake, say it was.
Okay, sure.
Uh,
It's a nice church.
He lives a life for a while, and in 11 December 1695, the Earl of Belmont, Richard Coote, who's I think that's right. That might be wrong. That seems wrong.
Richard Coote.
Coote.
Coote?
Hold on, I'm gonna double check my notes because.
Dick Coote.
Yep, Richard Coote, Dick Coote. He's an Irishman.
Okay.
He's the first Earl of Belmont, which means that he earned this title. He's the guy he's the first guy who got it.
I made this title up.
He
baby.
was a hardcore Williamite who supported William of Orange and the Glorious Revolution during this 9 years war that they're fighting. And so he profited greatly from it. He is the governor of New York, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts,
Oh.
all at once. So he's a big deal,
Okay.
as well as being an
Those
earl
are-
and having land back in Ireland.
Those are adjacent.
They are all
Okay,
adjacent.
So, don't, like,
So it's not
I gotta-
like he's got to go all the way here, and he's got to go all the way here, and he's got to go all the way here. No,
the commute to
yes,
govern is.
but
too
he's governing 3 colonies at once. Though.
Okay.
That's a pretty big deal.
That is a big deal.
Which apparently just happened. Like every so often, the king would be like, "You just run that.
Okay. Well,
Doing a
yeah.
good job."
Sounds like a king thing to do. I don't want to. Run
Now-
it. You run it.
Bellamont had a problem with pirates. He's sick of the pirates that are just destroying trade. So he approaches Kidd,
Yeah.
who was a pirate. Well, he was a privateer who worked for the British and got the shaft from pirates and like his ship got taken by pirates. So he doesn't like pirates, and he's like, well, Captain Kidd, would you mind being a pirate for me? It would be a great honor to the royal crown if you do so. And
Right.
he basically gives him an offer he can't refuse. It would be considered horrible manners to refuse
Tis
the
not
governor.
Okay. I guess.
He's promised.
But he had not been pirating.
He hasn't for like 4 years. He's been a good boy.
I've been out of the game for a while, buddy.
He's been out of the game for a while, but he's still renowned for being a merchantman and being brave, being good at what he's doing.
Yep.
Sailor and capable, and he actually knows one of the pirates they want him hunting down is William Mays, who is the captain of his former ship.
I know that ship.
And he's like, I don't like that guy.
Okay.
Is colorful there? Because I'm going to kill him.
All right.
So
Save
he-
it, buddy. Save
All
it.
right, I'm on board. Let's do this. So Bellamont and a bunch of other backers collect a ton of money to fund the expedition and buy a new ship. They also get a letter of marque signed by the king. Now, a letter of marque is the official written charter that says you are officially a privateer in service to the crown. And it's signed by the king and it's stamped with his seal. So William of Orange has signed this. This is a legitimate privateering industry.
Okay.
He is charged with hunting down pirates, and any enemies of the crown are fair game, which includes all of France.
Okay.
As long as it's French, he
French
can do it.
or pirates.
French or pirates. So that's what he's specifically chartered he can do. Now, he's not supposed to attack anything else. He specifically is not supposed to fight the Dutch,
Okay.
who are allies against the
Fight the
French
Dutch?
right now, because basically this
Dutch.
war is it's considered the First World War.
Oh.
This is actually the first one because it's got all the colonies involved, and it has England, the Holland or
Yep.
the Netherlands,
French.
the Holy Roman Empire, the Spanish are all basically fighting the French,
Oh, I see.
and it's happening everywhere. So there's shipping battles, there's land war, everything that could happen is happening. There's huge changes in governance.
Oh.
It's a massive war. So they have to be careful who they can attack.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to. You just focus on the French. That's it. That's it. Attack the French. That's all you do.
All right.
So he's like, cool, I'll attack the French. Yay! So 80% of the expenses are covered by these nobles
Nice.
to fund this. Kidd covers part of it. Allegedly, the king personally covered some of the financing because he's like,
Nice.
yeah, fight my enemies.
Sure.
Great.
All right.
And part of the letter of marque is he gets 10% kickback to him as king. Good for him.
Okay.
They they don't build it from scratch, but it's a relatively new ship, and they call it the Adventure Galley.
Ooh.
She is 284 tons, which is pretty big, with 34 guns, 150 crew, and oars. So normally ships don't have oars anymore; they don't use them very often.
Yeah.
But this had 2 banks of oars on each side, so that if the weather ever shifted and you became becalmed or there was no wind, you could still row. It was slow going, but you could at least move.
Okay.
It also helps with sharper maneuvers.
Yeah.
Whip out the oars and you can make a sharper turn. You can go in different places that a ship that's just going by wind wouldn't want to risk.
Right.
So it's really useful for pirate hunting because pirates tend to hide out in little coves.
Yeah.
And you can go in now and you can outmaneuver them with rowing and you can outmaneuver them and shoot them.
Okay.
And then you win.
Good.
Great ship for what they're doing. He handpicks the crew. He's really proud of that. 150 guys. He selects each one individually. Great start.
Good.
This is all
Have you
happening.
ever mutinied?
Yeah.
Have
pretty
you ever
much.
thought about
Have you ever
mutiny?
thought about mutiny?
All right, come on.
How much experience do you have mutinying? None? Good. All right, you're in. Bam, boom. Bob's your uncle. Let's go kill some people. So all of this happens in London. We went from New York, because bear in
okay.
mind, British government controls everything. This is not America. This is Britain, right? This is all part of the same country. But the main shipbuilding is happening in England. That's where the best docks are. So they want the nicest thing. Now, this ship at the time cost £8,000, which is $1.2 million by today's money. So this is a
Nice.
big investment.
Nice ship.
Right? And we have a picture of it's I think the Charles galley, which is same design, but they don't actually have a picture of the Adventure galley. But this is the ship,
So something like that.
something like that.
All right.
So nice sized ship, can hold 150 people comfortably. That's imagine 150 people crammed onto a boat.
Yeah.
But that's a sizable crew. That means they can fight hand to hand if they have to. They can do boarding actions. They can, ranged combat. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
And then they still have room for some loot. Good day for them.
Sure. And their main job is to get pirates in.
Yes. So the main job is to get stuck in and fight and kill guys. So yeah, as long as they're killing pirates, they're good. And the pirates would have taken the choice cargo. So if you're lucky, you hit a pirate after he took a prize, which is something some privateers did. Is they'd wait for the pirate to steal from somebody, and then they'd get them, and then they'd steal what they stole, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's shady.
It's true.
Super shady.
But also, that would be a good time. That's right after they've attacked somebody. Right,
they're weak.
They're weak, tired. They're not wearing. They're
The
celebrating.
nicer thing would be wait until they're trying to fight the merchant ship and then sail in, so you've got two ships fighting the one ship, and then you can win, and then you save them the grief of losing and being tortured and losing all their loot. But if you wait, there's less pirates anyway, and then you also get all the stuff they stole.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to give any of it back.
Okay.
So if you're a particularly cutthroat, awful human being, that's what you did. If you're a decent human being who actually took the job seriously, you did the other thing and helped. So we've got his brand new ship, and he's pretty high on things, and as he's sailing out along the Thames, he goes past Greenwich, which is like a little part of London, and he refuses to salute the naval vessel there, because he's like, well, I'm the Navy as well, aha! And the naval vessel does not appreciate this. Apparently you're supposed to salute by firing a shot, like it's a symbolic thing. So they fire a shot across the Adventure Galley's bow, and then they pull up alongside of him and board them, and they're like, you didn't salute us. And he's like, well, I don't have to. I'm a privateer. Look, I've got a letter of marque. And they're like, we don't care. You know what we're doing because you've irritated us? We're press ganging your crew.
Press ganging?
And he says, you can't do that. He's like, oh, yes, we can. Look, I've got guns. You don't. Mine now. You're also in the midst of London, old boy. We could just kill you. So he just gets treated horribly by this guy who comes in and basically steals half his crew.
Oh.
And just says, well, these are now sailors. So his hand-picked elite crew that he's super proud of loses half its guys before they even leave the Thames.
Well, I'm
They're
sure.
not even out of England yet.
I'm sure that he won't hold a grudge.
Nope. So that was in August. He basically sits and parks for a little bit because he's got to figure out how he's going to leave.
Oh, yeah.
Now he's lost a huge chunk of his crew. And in September, he finally sails. He goes to New York first to get more guys.
Okay.
Unfortunately, New York does not have a huge population of sailors who are willing to go off pirate hunting. But they do have a lot of ex-pirates and criminals who need a job.
Okay.
So he gets those guys.
This plan is sounding worse and worse.
It is. One of these fellows is named Hendrik van der Huel, who is a Dutchman, and he's the quartermaster. Now, quartermaster is usually considered the second highest rank on the ship. They make sure everybody has provisions. They sort things out. It's a really important job. They usually either have a ton of experience or they have some education. They have to be able to write, to keep a ledger and a journal and all that stuff.
Organized.
He is described as a small black man. Now, this is interesting because they don't clarify whether he was African or if he just was like swarthy and had black hair. And because we know for a fact he's Dutch, he could just be swarthy guy with black hair. Or what's interesting is if he's actually of African descent, he would be the highest ranked black pirate that has a name that's been named in history. Which is pretty cool. Because, I mean, it's unfortunate to say like they never got a higher ranking and became like captains.
Sure, I guess.
I mean, in Africa, like if you were straight up an African pirate, but that wasn't really a thing. North African pirates, like in the Mediterranean, that's a thing. But most of Africa was not sailing around doing piracy. They were largely resisting the colonizing efforts, and they weren't so worried about these large ships and going out and doing those things. But it's a sign of the times, too, that most black people in that part of the world were in chains. They were slaves. So it's interesting, though, that if this guy was actually of African descent, that's pretty cool that he worked his way up and became like a quartermaster on a
Sure,
ship.
yeah.
Even a pirate ship, that's pretty impressive. But this is technically a privateer, which is some class. That's a royal commission. That's a big deal. So just a little note that was, I thought, interesting and noteworthy.
Yeah.
Now, as they're sailing around, this is September while they're sailing, he can't find any pirates. He makes it all the way to Africa because the job is go to the Indian Ocean
Yeah.
to hunt the pirates down. He gets to Africa, nothing.
That's suspicious.
They find a Dutch trading vessel and a New York trading vessel, and his crew's like, get them! We're pirates! And he's like, we're not pirates,
pirates.
we're privateers. There's a difference, and our commission doesn't cover these things.
Okay.
They're like, well, but we they catch cholera at some point,
Oh.
and a third of the crew dies.
Oh no.
Still no pirates. Still no action. Still no privateering. No French shipping. Nothing.
Whew, this 3-hour tour is becoming a drag.
Yep. They get around to the Indian Ocean, and they are desperate. They're dying for a fight. They haven't made any money because all of their money is based on piracy.
Mm-hmm.
Legal piracy, but piracy nonetheless. So things are going badly. October of 1696. So a month later, one of his crew sees a Dutch ship and he's like, let's take it. And Kidd says, no, you're not going to take that ship. I forbid it. And the guy basically says, well, you're an idiot. And he says, well, you're a bad guy and you should shut your mouth and know your place.
Yeah.
And he says, well, if I'm a bad guy, it's your fault because you've made us all miserable and you suck. And Kidd whacks him over the head with a bucket and kills him.
Oh.
Now, captains are allowed to be mean to their crew.
Yeah.
Corporal punishment is allowed. Beatings are fine. Killing a crew member outright for being disrespectful is not okay.
Yeah.
But he basically says, oh, I know a guy back stateside. I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Throw him overboard next place.
Next.
So this is not endearing his crew to him
Okay.
at all.
He
He's
didn't
just-
like even say, oops, I didn't mean to do
no,
that.
he was just like, I mean, yeah, he might have, oh, I didn't mean to hit him so hard, but he probably went, yeah, let that be a lesson to the rest of you. I've got more buckets. Imagine what I could do with a sword.
Ooh.
This is to carry water. This is to kill people. I'm a lethal weapon. Captain Kidd.
Now, excuse me, I gotta mop the deck.
And then he just goes away. Oh my God, I can't believe I killed him. That was a total accident. Crap, I'm in so much trouble, but I'm going to
knew?
maintain a brave face.
Who knew a bucket could be so deadly?
I'm going to kill you all. I knew him. I'm so sad.
Oh, I'm not gonna.
Oh my
You have to
God.
clean up the mess with the bucket.
I feel bad. I killed the crew.
Poor guy.
I'm a
Sorry,
terrible
kid.
captain. No, hey, get back to work, you wastrels. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna cry and I lie down.
Poor,
Poor Captain Kidd.
Poor Captain Kidd.
So they finally get into India, and he's killed a guy. The crew's pissed. They're having a bad bunch
Bad
of
trip.
time.
Yeah.
Fast forward to January of 1698. So a whole year goes by of just
And they haven't found any pirates.
they don't get a, they do attack some ships, but none are pirates.
Okay. Now we gotta do something. All right.
They may have attacked some Dutch shipping at this point.
We might.
Might have gotten desperate because there were reports from prisoners that Kidd's men would beat them with cutlasses. It's a sword, and they just whack them with them. I don't think they were trying to slice them open, but they just slap the snot out of them with a 3-foot metal blade.
Okay.
That sucks.
Yeah, I bet.
Like, and they just do that. They just had fun. So that's their torture.
Okay.
There's another one where Kidd and the captain of a ship that he was capturing had dinner together, and they just talked, and then his guys just looted the ship and tortured everybody.
Oh, after dinner?
No, while he was having dinner.
While he had dinner.
He had dinner with the officers, and then everybody else had the just
Oh.
awful time.
Oh, I should have ordered the fish.
They're like, why didn't you have the whole crew eat with you?
I
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm having a great time. This is wonderful.
Dinner parties. All right.
So this January, 1698, they see a big ship. It's a prize. 400 tons.
Sweet.
It is the Quedagh Merchant. Queedagh. This is going to become one of the most famous ships in all of history. She's a 400-ton Indian ship, so she's got a different build. All
Okay.
ships are she's. I don't know why. Finally, the women get some respect.
Yeah, okay. So that's probably why.
That's probably it. It's loaded with satin,
Ooh.
muslin, which is like that thin, sheerish cloth,
Yep.
gold, silver,
Fancy shit.
silk, which
Fancy.
is worth even more, and various other East Indian goods. So probably spices, handcrafted things made out of maybe ivory, rare materials that you can't
Yeah.
get. I'm thinking porcelain, China, stuff
Okay,
like
sure.
that.
Nice ship.
This thing is wealthy. It's owned by Armenian merchants. So it was owned by an Indian company that made it. Then Armenian merchants loaned it out, and it has an English captain. It's also flying under a French flag because the guy is concerned about French piracy in the area. He has passes that allow him to fly these colors. So, coming up on the ship, the adventure galley raises French flag. And then he raises a French flag. He's like, aha, we're on the same side.
Yeah.
Well, that makes the adventure galley go, French ship, kill him.
Got him.
Ha ha! So they attack the ship and they take it. And this is just a ludicrously wealthy prize. Hooray! The problem was, because it's not actually a French ship,
Yeah.
this counts as piracy.
But they told us they were
But
French.
they said they were French.
Uh,
So he keeps the passes from the ship. He's like, aha, I have evidence that they said they were French.
Yep.
They had the French flag. What?
I was told one thing I could do.
So he takes this new ship. He renames it the Adventure Prize because the Queedagh Merchant is hard to pronounce.
Sure.
And sails to Madagascar with his loot to sell it to local places. Now, Madagascar at this point is like pirate heaven. For a while, this was considered like the pirate kingdom.
Ooh.
Because it's a nice little island, lots of little
island,
places
yep.
to go. Nobody owns it. I don't think is an indigenous human population. It's like all animals,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is unfortunate for the animals because
I
pirates
guess.
got to eat.
We're here because there's no people. Oh no. Pirates.
Monkey is delicious.
Gross.
Yeah.
All right.
It's basically like little people. And everyone's like, that guy's weird. Madagascar has an interesting history because it's like a boom town. So imagine like an American boom town where it's super popular for a long time
Yeah.
and then it just suddenly dies.
All right.
So at its height, there's like hundreds of people coming and going every day. And then when it's finally at its decline, one of these guys who was writing about pirates went there and there were like 30 people living there and most of them were like sick.
Ew.
And it was swampy and gross and this pirate kingdom was just not a piece
Yeah,
of
the
it.
pirate life is not as glamorous as I thought it would
It's
be.
not glamorous. Like everybody's like, yo ho, pirate's life for me. No, it sucks because there's lots of times where nothing happens and then it's interspersed with extreme violence. And then you get money and then you probably get syphilis or cholera and then you go back to doing it.
Yay.
Yay. So being a farmer's boring, but you have food
Right.
and not syphilis, usually.
Okay.
Usually.
Usually. You can get. Watch
Okay.
out, kids. Be safe out there.
So when he gets to Madagascar, he bumps into a ship that he recognizes.
Ship seems familiar.
It's his old ship. And Robert Culliford
Is
the
there?
captain
Is
now.
Ha ha.
Now, Culliford has like 20 guys on his crew.
Okay.
There's two versions of the story. One of them is nonsense because it has no backing, and the book was written in 2002, so this guy was not there. The other version of it, and most of the source material for this comes from a book called A General History of the Pirates. Pirates is spelled Pyrates.
Pirates.
The writer wrote all this down in like 1725, but nobody really knows who the writer was. So there's a thought that he was probably a pirate, or he was just some guy who basically toured around with different pirates writing this down because he wanted to know it. And pirates are like, yeah, I want to be famous. Write about me. There's drawings and all kinds of woodcuts. It's a very interesting book. But it's kind of like like a guide on who's who of pirates. Like, here's Blackbeard, this is what he looks like. Here's Black Bart, this is what he looks like. Here's Henry Morgan, that's what he looked like. Here's this guy, and it's a fascinating book.
Huh.
You can buy it today. It's pretty cool. So he sees Culliford, and he's like, oh, I hate that guy. But according to the history of the pirates, they have dinner together. And they drink, and they have apparently an affable time.
Sure.
And
Tell
all
dessert.
of Kid's crew deserts
Oh no.
and joins Culliford. Because they're sick of, they
I
blame
suppose.
Kid for
It has
everything that has gone wrong.
It has been a long, rough year.
Even though he just got like this amazing prize.
Yeah.
They're like, well, that was good, but the rest of the year and change was awful. You're a terrible captain. We don't want anything to do with you. Even though it's not his fault.
Right. Or maybe it was.
I mean, it could have been,
Yeah.
but this again, this is pirate culture. If the captain is not like a dictator,
Yeah.
he can't just do whatever he wants. If
Apparently.
he does a terrible job, he can just lose his job and be replaced. Also, interestingly enough, is how pirates split up money. So before all this goes down, they split up their loot. Every pirate gets an equal share.
Okay.
The officers get a share and a half. So not a lot more. They
But
just
a
get
little,
like 50% more. And the captain gets a double share. That's it.
Okay.
It's not like the captain gets 90% and everybody else gets the rest.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they set aside the 10% for the crown. That's going to them. They put that in a box. And then split up the rest of the loot evenly. So there's all kinds of instances of this happening. They usually would stop on like a beach and haul out all the treasure. That was a thing. Or they would just do that on the ship. And they parcel it out. They put it in a big pile. And here you go. This is your bits.
Okay.
And the quartermaster was the guy who oversaw all of that. That was his main job at that point. The captain suddenly was not involved.
He knows how to count to 10.
Exactly. That's why he can count. So he loses his ship.
Yeah.
Well, he actually just loses his crew, but he's got 2 ships still. He's got the galley,
Yeah.
which apparently has been springing leaks since they got to Africa the first time. So for a year, they're sailing around in a leaky boat.
Okay.
He says, you know
Probably
what?
Didn't help the mood.
I'm sick of this ship.
Yep.
He sets it on fire
Yeah. That's the ship's fault.
after taking every piece of metal he can out of the ship.
Okay.
Every
But-
single piece of metal. Every
All by
hinge,
himself?
Down to the hinges.
Okay.
He's got 13 guys left.
Okay.
Out of his crew of like 150, he's got 13 guys left. They take the adventure prize, the Queedag, and they sail to the Caribbean.
Okay.
Now, along the way, he finds out he's been branded a pirate, which means men of war are hunting him. Those are
no.
those massive warships.
Yeah.
They are hunting him down, and he's like, oh, crap. What am I going to do? I'll go to Boston, and I'll talk to the governor, who's my friend, and then he'll give me a pardon, and it'll all be fine.
It'll be fine.
Because I'm doing this for them.
Yep.
I'm doing this for them. They told me go be a pirate. I've
I
got the
was
letters that says it's a French boat, and I've got this, and I've got that. I'm doing it. I'm just doing what you told me. And you'll hear something about a bucket. Doesn't matter. That guy's a mutineer, and he's
One
deep.
guy.
It
You
doesn't
kill
matter.
one guy
you
with a
kill
bucket.
one guy with a bucket. That's how fierce I was as a pirate. I went to battle with it. I know what time I'm keeping going. There's more. So I had to explain all of piracy.
Keep going.
Okay, now I get my little timer. Awesome. So in 1698, there's what's called the Act of Grace. This is
yeah.
You guys were pirates.
Yep.
You're fine.
Yep.
If you come
Was,
in, you
was,
have
yeah.
to come in
Yeah.
and tell us what you did, and we can go, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You're clear.
Okay.
And they honored that. They
Yeah.
did not.
You can't say that and not honored. Yeah.
Kid was expressly removed from. He was forbidden.
Oh.
They said we don't care about that. He's still going down.
Oh.
And Henry
was-
Every also was another one.
Why all this hate towards Kid?
There's a reason.
Okay.
When Kidd became a pirate, all of the nobles who backed him were members of the Whig political party. They were
Whig.
considered like the more radical group. They'd be the Liberal Party versus the Conservative Party
Yes.
kind of concept. The Tories are now in power.
Hmm.
They hate the Whigs so much that they're looking for any reason to discredit them. So they're going to get Kidd and say, look what the Whigs do. They hire crazy pirate people to go be murderers for them.
Look at it.
And they want him to name names so they can further insult and bring down the Whig Party. So it's all politics at
Oh,
the
man.
highest levels.
All right.
So Kidd's caught in the middle of this. He has no idea that that's what's going on. His friend, the governor, sends him a letter saying,
This
all
is
right,
good. Yeah, all
you're in trouble.
right.
Come on down, I'll talk to you. We'll sort it out. But Kid, knowing that he's being hunted down anyway, just wants to be safe. He sells off all his loot, all the stuff. So now he's just got money. And when he sails back to New York to meet up with his friend, he takes like a really weird route. He goes like far north, then backtracks 90 miles just because he's got other mutineers that might be looking for him. The guys
Right.
from his old crew who already left.
Sure.
They're out for blood and they want his money. He stops on Gardiner's Island, and this is what made Captain Kidd incredibly famous. He buried his treasure. He is the only pirate in all of history known to have buried treasure. So the entire myth of the buried treasure thing was
from this
Captain Kidd.
All right.
He stopped along the way. His guys got out. They dug a hole. They threw the treasure in, and then they sailed off. Now, it's not known exactly the details of like if he just buried it by himself or if a bunch of his guys were involved, but this is where Treasure Island comes from. This is the concept of it. Now, Gardiner's Island is not in the Caribbean. It is just off of Long Island in New York. It's just a little tiny, little dinky island. So he stopped on the way. He's like, wait. I gotta get out. I gotta get out for 1 second. Just 1 second.
This is what take a moment.
Where are you going with the chest, Captain? Don't worry about it. This has spawned like all kinds of treasure hunts to find it. It's
exciting,
a huge thing. He also sunk the Quedagh in the Caribbean. He scuttled it. He didn't want anybody. He didn't want to be followed because of that ship. So that became a huge thing. Is people wanted to find that ship because that's a big deal. That's a major part of history. He gets to New York, and Bellamont's not there. He has left New York because he's got to be elsewhere. He says, "Come to Boston. We'll meet up." The second Kid gets to Boston, Bellamont has him arrested, and then he throws him in prison.
Thanks,
Because
buddy.
Bellamont, who is a Whig, notes party's power has shifted, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Nice.
So I'm going to cut you off. So Kid now is the scapegoat.
What's the point of having friends like that?
They also arrest his wife, who was not on the ship.
No.
She was not part of the piracy. She had nothing to do with it other than being married to this guy who was officially hired to do this stuff. They ignore Kid's pleas about, I have got these papers that say this, and I have this treasure. I'll give that to you guys if you let me go. Like, I've got all this proof that justifies what I did. He's held in solitary confinement for a year, to the point where it for sure temporarily drove him insane. It may have permanently broken his mind.
Yeah.
Now, the politics come in because the Tories show up, and this is just the Tories sucking once again. They say, if you tell us who you worked for, we'll let you go.
Okay.
Kid is either too crazy or too pissed off to tell them anything, and he refuses to budge on it. Seeing that he is not politically useful, rather than give him a pardon or do anything like that, they don't care about the letters of marque. They have him publicly hanged.
Ooh.
Now here's the kicker. The first time they hang him, the rope snapped.
Ah.
So he's like, you can't kill me. Oh yeah, we'll just try again.
Oh, you have more rope. Oh.
And they hang him.
Darn it.
To ward off all pirates, they put his body in chains for 3 years. They had him sitting at Execution Dock in London, and this is the woodcut of it. Him just dangling there in a cage. Eventually, his wife was released. So he was killed the 23rd of May, 1701. So he was arrested 1699 on July 6th. So it's almost it's more than a year that he was in prison.
All right.
His wife was freed and went back to New York and she remained, I guess, a prominent member of society. She did fine for herself.
Sure.
Good for her.
Except
Culliford was captured.
Okay, good.
That backstabber, and escaped and was never found again.
Oh, Culliford.
That son of a gun got away with it. Then in the 13th of December 2007, the Quedagh was located in the Caribbean, and it was brought up, part of it. Oh, okay. So like bits and pieces of it are all over the world now on display. There's like cannons that were recovered. I should have looked up about his treasure, and actually I'm going to see if his treasure ever was found, because I don't think it was, because people have dug up Gardiner's Island for years.
Yeah, what do you think?
I just want to make sure.
So they never recover the treasure, so it's just a myth. He might not even have been
there's just tons of false finds. There's a May 2015, a 50-kilogram ingot expected to be silver is found in a wreck. Thought to be part of his treasure, but it was something else.
Okay.
It was actually lead. But yeah, there's just this myth, and songs were made about all of his buried treasure and all this. He might have literally just buried like 100 pounds. Nobody knows how much was buried because it was never actually brought up.
Good story.
But it's a fantastic story, and it built this legacy of pirates buried the treasure.
Yeah.
So then from then on, anytime people caught pirates, they're like, kill him, find out where he buried his treasure, torture him. Where's So poor Captain Kidd, while renowned as like this fearsome pirate, was originally hired on to be a privateer, and he had horrible luck. And then the people who hired him totally bailed on him, even though he did exactly what he's supposed to do.
Rough life.
Utter nonsense. So
Rough life for a pirate.
Being a pirate sucks. Don't be a pirate. So that's it. That's it. Life and Times Captain Kidd. I went over, and I don't even feel bad about it because we talked all about the parts. I got to wear my cool hat.
All right. As always, thank you, Will. And if you have any comments or corrections, put those in the thing below.
Ooh, and to clarify, I'm not being a Captain Kidd apologist. I know he did bad stuff.
Oh, sure.
I don't want people to think like I'm like, oh, this poor guy. He still was like a murderer and a pirate.
Yeah.
But he totally got railroaded, so I have to feel.
He was the protagonist of our story,
he was
so
the
we
protagonist
do
of our
tend
story, so we tend to lean towards that guy. But
Either way, if you have any comments or suggestions on that, fit in the thing. Like and subscribe as always.
Share.
And share it with other people. If you feel like it can support us, feel free to support us. As well. And then you can tune in to us next week. We're going to be going to Asia.
Yep, Japan.
Japan for the 47 Ronin.
The 47 Ronin. Legendary story. It's going to be great.
All right. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Mike.
We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.